Good morning. It is 10 a.m. on May 23rd, 2023. We'll call to order the meeting of the Story County Board of Supervisors. Please stand with me if you're able and say the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. We have one change to the agenda today. We are removing item 5 from consent. It will be brought back at another date. But that is the only change I'm aware of. Entertain a motion to adopt the agenda with that change.
I move approval. I move to adopt the agenda with the number 5 removed from the consent agenda as discussed.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Hens.
Aye.
Merkin. Basil, aye. Now it's time for public comment number 1. This comment period is for the public to address topics on today's agenda. Anyone wishing to make public comment, you can raise your hand on Zoom or step forward to the table. Seeing no one step forward or raise their hand, we'll close public comment number 1 and move to number 6, bid opening for HMA resurfacing project on 510th Avenue from Polk County North.
Morning.
Good morning.
Morning.
Good morning. The first bidder we have is Grimes Asphalt and Paving Corp. Their bid bond is attached and signed. The bid for Grimes Asphalt is $247,761.55. 247,761.55. The next bidder we have is Inroads LLC. Their bid bond is signed and attached. Inroads bid is $279,342.93. 279,342.93. The third bidder we have is Manats Incorporated, and their bid bond is attached and signed. Their bid for the project is $214,044.25. 214,044.25. We do have a fourth bidder that's not on your sheet. It's Des Moines Asphalt. Their bid bond is attached and signed. The bid for Des Moines Asphalt is $240,888.64. 240,880.64. So it appears Manats is a low bid. We'll double check their numbers and bring it back for our recommendation next week.
Thank you.
Great.
Next, we have bid opening for Story County Permanent Counter Shields Project. Good morning.
Good morning. Looks like we have one bid from Harold Pike Construction out of Ames, Iowa. Their bid bond is included and signed. Okay. Base bid amount is 330,000. Even 330,000.00. They show completion within 30 weeks. For alternate one, which is to add the front desk, the main entry of this building is 25,000. 25,000.00. They show using reflections, glass and mirror as their storefront subcontractor. And they show they acknowledge addendum number 1 from 5/18 of 2023. That is our only bid. So we'll review and be back next week with our recommendation.
Great.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we have consideration of proclamation recognizing May 21 through 27, 2023 as Emergency Medical Services Week in Story County. Supervisor Merkin, would you like to start?
Thank you. Whereas emergency medical services are a vital public service and the members of emergency medical services teams are ready to provide life-saving care to those in need 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And whereas access to quality emergency care dramatically improves the survival and recovery rate of those who experience sudden illness or injury. And whereas in the last 10 years, EMS has been vital to emergency medicine and to saving lives. Medical emergencies and situations faced by all medical practitioners require quick problem solving and years of training. And
Whereas the emergency medical services system consists of first responders, emergency medical technicians, paramedics, emergency medical dispatchers, firefighters, police officers, educators, administrators, pre-hospital nurses, emergency physicians, trained members of the public, and other out-of-hospital medical care providers. And whereas the members of emergency medical services teams, whether career or volunteer, engage in thousands of hours of specialized training and continuing education to enhance their life-saving skills.
And whereas National Emergency Medical Services Week brings together local communities and medical personnel to publicize safety and honor the dedication of those who provide the day-to-day life-saving services of medicine's front line. Now therefore be it resolved that we, the Story County Board of Supervisors, do hereby proclaim May 21st through 27th, 2023 as Emergency Medical Services Week in Story County and encourage the communities to observe this week with appreciation and gratitude for those emergency medical services. I move the proclamation.
second,
Moved and seconded, Hens.
Aye.
Merkin.
aye.
Basil, aye. Moving on to agency reports, we have Raising Readers Annual Report. Christy Mayo, Executive Director. Morning.
Good morning.
Good
Thank you for
morning.
having me today. Well, as reported, my name is Christy Mayo. I am with Raising Readers in Story County. I am their new executive director. I think I'm still new, just over a year or half a year. So I'm happy to be here today to report on the progress and activities of Raising Readers. The mission of Raising Readers in Story County is to support the language and literacy development of young children by providing books, caregiver guidance, and early childhood programs. We envision a future in which generations of young children would get a solid foundation in reading and communicating and learning that would help prepare them to be successful students and citizens in our communities. Well, with asset support, Raising Readers has positively impacted early literacy, and we continue to do that following those 3 strategies in our mission. Our programs range from indirect services, where we provide resources and information aimed at raising awareness and supporting caregivers in their role of developing literacy. And then, of course, our more direct programming, which would be our programs where we work both with caregivers and with children. We have approximately 9 different programs that we are implementing at this time. To name some that this board supports would be our Story Pals program, our STARS program, our community bookshelves, our Reading Buddies program, and our gift books programming. Asset funds provided by Story County Board of Supervisors have supported our efforts in fiscal year 22-23 in the areas of family development and education, out of school learning, and advocacy. So our research tells us that 90% of a person's brain growth occurs in the first 5 years of life. So that's kind of a guiding principle and really factors into a lot of the decisions that Raising Readers makes in terms of focusing our activity and our priority. Children begin their academic career at approximately age 5. So some simple math tells us that we need to reach these children before they get into the school setting. And so that is much of what's at the forefront of our minds when we're thinking about how we can serve our community. We do find that some adults don't understand their role necessarily in that regard, and others think that they will go to school and they'll learn everything they know. And unfortunately, we know there's a lot of work that needs to be done before a child enters the school setting. So that's where we try to step in and provide some guidance. We do know that with recent data shared by the Iowa Department of Education that approximately 1/4 of the children in our county are still entering behind the ball, so to speak. They're falling out on that first fall benchmark assessment. So we know that we're going to need some intervention and continue to advocate with these families to know how important their role is in terms of preparing children for their academic career. In my report, I went through some of the statistics in terms of number of families that we serve, locations that we serve, and provide different programming. I won't reiterate all of that for you, but I do want to say that as research continues to really show and support that early exposure to literacy being so much of an importance in terms of preparing a child for school, that family development and education service area is remaining a very high priority for our education or for our organization, excuse me. I do have to point out that we do have services for children after they are already into the school setting, and that is where that out of school learning piece comes in. While we very much understand that pre-literacy piece and how we need to develop and support that, we do know that some children unfortunately don't receive that foundational piece that's needed. And we want to do what we can to support those students to continue to support their reading development and to fill in gaps wherever we can. So we do provide that community-based support service, which is our Reading Buddies program. This is something that runs throughout the year. It's fall, winter, spring, and then again in the summer. In fact, we're just getting ready to start that program again for this year. This is an area where it's highly individualized. Children are assessed at the beginning and individual lesson plans are created so that it's just not kind of a one-time fits all type of program, very much tailored to the individual child. We see where they're lacking in skill. We use a sequential curriculum in terms of phonetics and decoding skills, that sort of thing, and apply that to the child. And then the other half of their session is a shared reading session with their buddy where they just can have a positive attitude or a positive experience with reading. A lot of the children who have come to our program have already fallen into kind of a cycle where reading isn't a pleasant experience for them. It's a struggle. And we want to kind of foster that idea that it doesn't have to be and that it can be enjoyable and really be a fun part of their world. So that's the second half of their session. Those sessions are very much run on volunteer support. The buddies are all volunteers. They're supported by our staff. The lessons are designed by our staff. They're trained by our staff, but we do need the volunteers. And the only reason I bring that out is because if you notice any changes in locations where we're able to provide our programming, it's typically because we're struggling still to recover from some of the effects of the pandemic, where some of our volunteers have either found other venues for their time or they're not yet ready to engage out in the public. And so I know when I looked back, as I said, new director, so I'm looking back at where programs have been historically placed and that sort of thing. And I noticed that we've had to, back up a bit on some of our county, smaller community placements. And, when delving into that, it's because of a lack of volunteers right now. So that's a priority for us. We're going out and trying to get into the communities and show that we're still here and hope that we can draw them back in and support our programs as well. The third area that is supported is the advocacy area, which of course is important, for all the reasons stated prior. To note that going into this next fiscal year, we are going to switch from that advocacy service code to the public education and awareness arena. We think it's just a little bit better fit for what we're actually doing. And those two service areas they're very closely aligned, but they're just small differences that it did feel that that public education and awareness code felt more true to the descriptions of our program. So we'll see that reflected in the coming year. Let's see. One newer program, or it's actually a change of programming. We used to have a program called Reading Corners, in which stationary literacy areas would be placed in offices throughout the community. With the pandemic and concerns about touch surfaces and congregating and that sort of thing, many of those reading corners were put away. We felt that it was time to perhaps approach agencies and partners about bringing those services back, or that and we're getting mixed reviews on that. So we took that into consideration and we decided to change it up a little bit. So if you see reference to something called community bookshelves, that's basically a new iteration of reading corners, where instead of books being used and returned and utilized over and over by clients, now we would just like to provide books for people to read and take, so that we don't have that contact issue of books being touched by several. So far, our community agencies have been supportive of that, so we look forward to implementing that in more and more locations over the year. So in conclusion, Raising Readers greatly appreciates Story County Board's continued learning and leading support of our academic programming, and appreciate that you're helping us find solutions to some of the academic challenges of our community and children.
Thank you. Any questions?
I don't have a question, just a comment. Thank you for all that you do. I know when I worked in early childhood, just the programs that we did and partnering with Raising Readers really to help foster, as you said, that birth to 5 for kiddos, so that they start early getting that knowledge base. And then I know that you partner with other entities such as Rotary, who each time they have a guest speaker, they sign a book, and that goes to, what is it, their second?
The 2-year-old visit at
Girl visit.
well,
So
child
they
visits,
receive a-
yes.
They receive a book from their pediatrician. So I think that's a good partnership, that they're seeing reading being promoted from multitudes of avenues.
We do too. Thank you.
And thank you for touching on the work that you've been doing and trying to do outside of Ames into all of Story County.
I really wanted to make note of that, because it's not lost on us that more can be done there, but we definitely are trying.
And sorry, go ahead.
I'd have one question. Do you accept donations of slightly used books, or do you just want new books?
We do, because those are the books that we utilize for these community bookshelves that we're putting out.
Okay.
As long as they're in
Good shape.
we call it gently used condition. So
Okay.
there's a sorting criteria, but absolutely we accept donations of those books.
And I also want to thank your volunteers, because I was briefly a Raising Readers volunteer. I thought, hey, this will be a snap. It really isn't. You have to have a certain talent to reach out to, a kid who you don't have a relationship with and to read and keep their attention. And I saw people who did it wonderfully and they do a great job.
I agree. I think our volunteers are fabulous.
Mhm. They are. Yes, thank you for your work. Next, we have consideration of minutes from May 16, 2023.
I move approval.
Second.
Moved and seconded, Merkin.
Aye.
Hens.
Aye.
Basil, aye. Consideration of personnel actions.
I move approval of personnel actions as listed.
Second.
Moved and seconded, Hens.
Aye.
Merkin.
Aye.
Basil, aye. Consent agenda.
Claims.
Claims.
Oh, I'm sorry. I knew I was going to flip too soon. Consideration of claims.
Move approval of claims as presented.
Second.
Moved and seconded, Merkin.
Aye.
Hens.
Aye.
Basil, aye. Now consent agenda.
I move approval of consent agenda with the previously noted that number 5 is removed.
Second.
Moved and seconded, Hens.
Aye.
Merkin.
Aye.
Basil, aye. We have no public hearing items today. Moving to additional items, discussion and consideration of resolution 23-91, City of Nevada voluntary annexation petition. Good morning.
I have a 2-slide presentation. Thanks, Leanne. So this is a voluntary annexation into Nevada. So what that means is a property owner who owns these 6 parcels requested the city annex them. And so this comes before you just for a recommendation. We don't approve or deny annexations, but we can make recommendations to city council, which is important, as you'll see in a minute. I'm going to talk about one unique aspect of this annexation. So again, there's 6 parcels straight south of Verbaio on 190th, north of Vetter Equipment. And if you could, thanks. This is in Nevada's urban expansion area. So this is an area that the city has planned for, I think, future industrial expansion in. And really, I believe this is facilitating some development by Verbaio. This site contains 3 wind turbines that are part of the county's urban renewal area. And we have a TIF district on them. So we collect increment off of these turbines to fund, our grants program. So when the annexation was proposed, Leanne and Ethan and Rhonda looked into how we can make sure we're still getting that increment and not losing that TIF district. It turns out that in 2012, I think when the TIF district was enacted, we had the foresight to make an agreement with Nevada that in the event of annexation, the TIF district would remain. So initially we thought we were going to need to draft an agreement, but we already have one. So I prepared the resolution with a letter from Ethan that he sent to the city administrator for Nevada, as well as a copy of that agreement. So when we provide the recommendation to Nevada, the city council, everyone will have a copy of that letter and the agreement.
And just for the record and for clarification, in case people don't know, Ethan Anderson is Assistant County Attorney.
Yes.
Leanne is special projects. Sorry,
And outreach.
get her an outreach. Thank you. Rhonda is in the auditor's office. Who else did we mention? I think that's it.
I think that's it.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
So
Just in case people
yes.
don't know.
No. So I just wanted to bring them all up because it was an effort to figure this out.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you recognizing them
Yeah,
in
thanks.
what you're sharing.
So with that, we wrote the resolution recommending the council take action to annex the property and acknowledge that this agreement is in place, so we will be able to still collect that increment. I can take any questions.
Your memo says principle 2 of the section on urban expansion areas in the C2C plan indicates the county should encourage annexation in these areas when development is proposed. And this is just curiosity. Why is this development seen as more appropriate in the city than in the county?
I'm not sure of the exact development plans for the property.
Oh, Okay.
And the annexation was initiated by the landowner.
Mhm. Okay.
So, generally what that would mean is even if there's not urban infrastructure available at a site, there, if it's annexed prior to development, then there's still ways the city can work with that property owner to make sure they can connect to sewer in the future, design the septic system so it can be connected. Make sure that the sprinkler systems constructed so that when there's city water in the future, building can be sprinkled. So even without urban infrastructure, when a property is annexed, there's still conditions or important design considerations. Even, the spacing of a driveway. Our driveway spacing is different in the county than it is in a city.
Right.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions? I would entertain a motion.
Excuse me just a second. Number. Move approval of residential or resolution 23-91, the City of Nevada's voluntary annexation petition.
Second.
Moved and seconded, Merkin.
Aye.
Edens. Basil, aye. Next, we have discussion and consideration. Thank you, Amelia. Next, we have discussion and consideration of revised vacation policy for 7-day review. Morning, Alyssa.
Good morning. Okay, so I know,
Okay,
I'm
it's
just not used to hearing that loud. Okay, so there has been some discussion and different things about our vacation policy and when we hire new employees, there's been some we have a 6-month waiting period before they can use any vacation. So current policy is they accrue behind the scenes. And when they get to their 6th month, which is technically their orientation period or their probation period, then they can utilize that week that they've accrued. What I have proposed here is that we just waive that 6 month so that employees can use as it's accrued. We're not fronting any vacation. We're not changing the accruals. But if in 3 or 4 months, they have a day accrued, they have a day planned of vacation, then that department head can grant that, or elected official can grant that time off. Currently, if they have, I think our departments and offices work extremely well as far as if somebody new is hired and they already have vacation plan, they're hired in May, they do grant that it is unpaid. Now, this won't completely take care of that because obviously they won't have much accrued, but it will help a little bit. So at this point, that is what I am proposing, just changing that. I don't know if anybody has any questions. If the draft's approved, I will send it out. We'll get comments from everybody, and then I'll be back next Tuesday.
Any questions?
No.
I move approval of the revised vacation policy and sent it out for 7-day review.
Second.
Moved and seconded, Hens.
Aye.
Merkin.
Aye.
Basil, aye. Thank you for working on that, Alyssa. Next, we have discussion and consideration of revised sick leave policy for 7-day review.
So this is another one of our benefits. The only change that is proposed in here is looking at our family sick leave. Currently, we have 40 hours or 5 days of family sick. We're looking, or the policy proposes changing that to 80 hours or 10 days per calendar year.
So it doesn't roll over, that doesn't accrue. the
It
family.
doesn't. So how our family sick works is employees accrue for sick leave, they accrue 18 days of sick leave a year. Pay period by pay period. So they get 5.54 hours. Of those 18 days a year, right now they can utilize 5 of them for family members. If this change is approved, they would be able to utilize 10 for family. So they have to have sick leave on the books in order to utilize family sick. One consideration, our family sick is on a calendar year. So we are getting just halfway through the year. So it is a little tricky changing that benefit mid-year, they wouldn't get an additional 80 hours. Their balance would go to 80. They've already used, so it would encompass what they've used.
So it'll tack 40
Yeah.
on to whatever, if they're at 10 today and tomorrow's when it changes, they'll be at 50.
Yes, that's how it would work. Now, that's a manual. There's nothing that we can do. I mean, it would all have to be a manual addition through payroll, unless we would make the change January with a calendar year. So that's another consideration.
So it's currently in a fiscal year.
It's currently on a calendar, but the policy update.
We'll be changing it
July
mid.
1st.
calendar
Gotcha.
year.
Yeah,
Okay,
so that's
okay.
the only, that's the only issue that I see. I don't know, I have not ran balances to see how many people have used family sick this calendar year, how many manual adjustments that would be.
But all it means is really you're changing the 40 to the 80, and by the end of the calendar year, they could have used 80 hours of their sick leave for family as opposed to 40.
Correct.
And either
They're not
time,
So if they've
accruing
already,
anything more, it's just
No.
what they can use.
Right.
yeah,
So
we
that's-
just have to take into consideration what they've already used this calendar year
right?
and take that off the 80 hours.
But whether we do it at the calendar or the fiscal year, it's still going to be a manual. It will still be manual.
The software resets it January 1st.
Oh, so in
Yeah,
January.
so it's not as
it
big
could
of a
happen.
manual. There's a little bit of manual,
So,
but
mm,
this would be, and again, I
Okay.
didn't think about that until,
Well,
20
I mean,
minutes
we can,
ago.
well, if we put it out for 7-day review, we'll get that feedback.
Yeah.
And that would help us inform whether we want to do it in July
or
or
January.
January.
Yeah. Now, one thing I do want to make a comment that this applies to those covered by the leave policies in the handbook. So these two, the vacation and the sick leave updates would not apply to the two contracts, the
Mhm.
sheriff deputies and the command staff contracts that have
Mm.
separate vacations, separate leave policies within those contracts. Everybody else is covered by
Okay.
the handbook for their
Okay.
for the leave policies. So I just want to make that, I don't want there to be confusion.
Right.
Um,
I also want to say thank you for working on this as well. Additional flexibility for folks with kids or family who they need to take off time for. I really appreciate that we're able to find a way to give people a little bit more
Yep.
access to their sick leave.
And there has been some changes. I know, I don't want to bring up COVID, but for some reason, then that would take, I mean, there could be 5 days that would,
Right,
influenza is the same thing if your kid gets influenza, but
right.
yeah. And again, we're not adding sick days. We're just we would be allowing employees to utilize their personal sick leave for family members.
I move approval of the revised sick leave policy to be sent out for 7-day review.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Merkin,
Aye.
Edens, Basil, aye.
Thank you.
Thank
Board.
you. Next, we have discussion and consideration and proposal for Phase 1 Cultural Resources Survey associated with disaster debris site. An update on disaster debris site management planning and site purchase.
Hello again.
Hello.
Okay, so the debris site, as you all know, we've been working with a consultant to cross our Ts and dot our Is prior to purchase, to make sure there's no factors that wouldn't allow us to use the site. Just as an update, so they did a Phase 1 environmental site assessment that came back with no real issues other than there are a few wetlands. But that's okay. We can still use the majority of the site. It could support up to debris up to 700 homes is what the consultants found. And we can do a buffer or stormwater retention or restoration around the wetlands. So that's not an issue. The Phase 1 environmental study also showed us that we don't need to do a Phase 2. Which saves us $16,000, which is great. The one thing that did come back was there was a trading post for the Meskwaki at a nearby farm residence, and there was likely camping in the area as a result of that use. It would be potentially recommended to do an archaeological survey of the site that could cost up to $12,000 if we have to do a full survey. I don't know if it is necessary. I'm working on figuring that out. I met with Homeland Security yesterday about it. We have to do an archaeological survey if we have federal funding, because we can't adversely impact cultural resources. That said, we already used the site for a debris site after the derecho, and there wasn't an issue. It didn't come up. And there seems to be an exception for sites that have already been impacted. And this one was by DuPont during the Stover use. And there is a base of gravel on the site that I believe falls under an exception for FEMA from requiring this archaeological survey. I want that in writing. But I wanted to bring this before you because I know next week is limited. And if we want to have an archaeological survey done before we purchase the site, I kind of need approval now. So this morning, what I'm asking for is if we have to do an archaeological survey approving this amount, but I'm hoping to get it in writing that we don't need it. And even if we do, I think given the level of disturbance, I do not believe the survey will be anywhere near the $12,000 mark, likely more around 2 to 5.
I can't see it from here. The green circles, is that wetlands?
They're
or-
potential wetlands, and I have the wetlands map over here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you're
Concerning.
looking for funding, are you looking? I mean, if necessary, if we want to move that direction, and you say that you're thinking the cost may be 2 to 5,000, are you still suggesting to do a motion that could be up to the 12?
Yes.
Okay, I just
I
want to be
am.
clear on what
Yep.
you're.
And we did, Lisa figured out how to work this into our budget. We did have that $16,000 cost, but I really, am hoping this is not necessary. I just do not want it to hold up the purchase of the site if it becomes necessary, because we do need to close in the month of June.
How much of the site are we losing the use of with
For the wetlands?
Yeah,
An acre.
okay.
So the wetlands total about an acre. They're not wetlands that are likely to be regulated by the Army Corps, where if we impact them, we have to buy mitigation credits. They are wetlands that under our own ordinance, there's certain protections afforded. Because this is a public use, however, we could impact them, but we'd have to restore them off-site by, working with county conservation to purchase a site to put permanent protections on other wetlands of similar size, or restoring them on site as part of a stormwater feature.
Okay.
Doing some mitigation elsewhere makes a lot more sense in terms of usability of this land. And given everything that's happened to it, I can't see it being a wetland that really is worth
No,
keeping.
they're very low quality.
Yeah, I would imagine. So I'm not, I'm glad we talked through that, though. That makes me not as concerned about that issue, because I'm sure we will find someplace that we will
Yes, and I think
in the wetland.
one thing that would be valuable is the site does drain to the southeast, kind of through that wetland area. We will need to do stormwater management on the site just because of the use, right?
Right.
We want to make sure our stormwater
Yes.
is treated before it goes off site.
Right.
And so doing a wetland restoration on the site makes a lot of sense too, if we can incorporate it in that stormwater
We
practice.
could do it further into the corner,
Yes,
perhaps, the
we
very
could.
southeast corner. That would
Yep.
make some sense.
Yes, so I think we have options, given that this is a public use, and under our own ordinance, public uses like this are allowed to impact
10 acres total.
One.
No, I mean the whole thing,
The whole thing is 20 acres.
20 acres, 5%. That's not much we're losing.
Yeah, so I think we've got 16 and a half usable acres,
Right.
really.
Because there's the drive, yeah. Okay.
And the consultant found that was about, if we cycled through the debris twice, we could accommodate debris from 700 homes.
Right.
So that's a very large number for the unincorporated area. I was pretty happy with that number. I think it's way more than any of our rural villages. Bernald has 40 homes. I think that if all of the rural subdivisions north of Ames were affected by an event, we might be equivalent to that, but we'd probably still be less.
Great. Any other questions?
I'd make a motion for approval of Phase 1 Cultural Resources Survey associated with disaster debris site and update on disaster debris management planning and site purchases with a cost of, if needed, $12,645.
Second.
Moved and seconded, Hens,
Aye.
Merkin,
Aye.
Basil, aye. We have no, thank you. We have no departmental reports, other reports. Direction on updating cornerstone to capstone plan, future land use map in the 2-mile area outside of Ames corporate limits.
Okay.
Marcus, were you gonna come up?
Marcus is gonna come up. We're gonna all tag team this one.
Okay.
So I asked Leanne this morning to help provide some background on, since Story County had planning and zoning, how we've worked to coordinate with cities on how they grow, because that's really the crux of the issue this morning, is that we acknowledge where cities show they're going to grow in an attempt to coordinate land use planning. So Leanne, do you want to come up here and I could go through your presentation? Okay.
Yeah, that's fine.
And then
Yeah.
Marcus and I will jump back in with the actual request, but I really appreciate Leanne providing her knowledge and history of planning on this topic.
Yeah, I appreciate you speaking too. Thank you.
Sorry, I thought you were going to go first, so I have your presentation. If you'll bear with me while I switch presentations. Well, good morning. For those, I mean, there are a couple of people in the audience that know me, and then there's some that don't. My name is Leanne Harder. I'm the County Outreach and Special Projects Manager. And really the reason that Amelia asked me to give some history is I've been at Story County since 1998 is what we decided. I was actually in the Planning and Development Department, or Planning and Zoning at that time, for a number of years, and served as director for about 13 years from 2001 till 2014. So a lot of what I'm going to share is history for you all. I lived through and was instrumental with a lot of it. Since 2014, I've been the County Outreach and Special Projects Manager with the Board of Supervisors office. I have a few quick slides just on history of planning overall in Story County. Anytime I have a chance to share this, I welcome it, because we really do have a long, rich history that I think it's an important message to share. Let's see, this is kind of a reverse timeline, and I added another thing to it, so please forgive a couple errors this morning because this was quickly thrown together. That 199, we're not going that far back in history. It should be in 1993. But really, Cornerstone to Capstone is our comprehensive plan that we're operating under right now, the C2C plan. I want to go back down 1957. That is really the cornerstone of planning and zoning in Story County. That is when in Story County, believe it or not, we had our first land use study done. That was a precursor for the zoning map, and then regulations that then became effective in September of 1958. You fast forward through that timeline, 1977, we do another land use map and plan. Keep on, you'll hear me saying land use, because that was our history. We started with land use in Story County. We get to 1992, we had the City of Nevada 28E agreement. Were you here, Dave? It's kind of coincidental that 96. Could have pulled your history in on this too. But that was really the beginning of our formal partnerships and intergovernmental cooperations with our municipalities throughout Story County. 1993, I should say, is our county development plan. That's our first formal land use plan since that 1977 plan. So almost 20 years later. 2003, we updated that county development plan. That's when we started the cooperative planning area approaches. The tiers 1, 2, and 3 that if you want a whole thesis on, I can get you some information on that, but also Les Beck, who was my predecessor, did in fact do his thesis on our 1993 county development plan. So there definitely is a history that's been well written. In 2006, we did the Ames Urban Fringe Plan. Actually, that's when it was adopted, but we really started work on it in October of 1999. And I know that for sure because I had a child a month later. So that is rooted in my memory. 2012, we brought in professionals from throughout the United States to guide us in community planning assistance team report. Really trying to take us to that next level towards a comprehensive approach, losing that land use element, not losing it, building on that land use element. 2013 is actually when we first adopted a strategic plan. So it kind of getting more specific for our county governmental operations. 2014, we took that step towards the first capital improvements plan. So talking about how we're looking forward with our investments as a county. And then 2016, the formal adoption of the C2C plan. The C2C plan was adopted to establish shared vision, goals, and strategies for Story County and to guide future actions and decisions, provides predictability and consistency over time, and created and delineates future land use designations for the unincorporated areas of Story County. That's directly out of the resolution that was adopted by the Board of Supervisors to adopt for the formal adoption in 2016. So just a few slides. I mentioned that cooperative planning area. If you look on the slide on the right, this is the 2003 iteration of the county development plan. This is when we took a step more towards a comprehensive plan than just a land use plan. In 93, it was still a land use with some steps towards comp. Really, this was like miles forward. Then 2016, we went the whole kit and caboodle, you could say. But you see the cooperative planning areas, those rings around each of the communities. Around Ames, you see that donut hole because at this time, the Ames Urban Fringe Plan was adopted. And then this is the Ames Urban Fringe Plan that then went through the intergovernmental agreement for the formal implementation of the planning document. I'm not going to go over all these, but just want to talk about in October 2011, like I said on that slide, we brought CPAT in, Community Planning Assistance Team. They looked at Story County and provided a set of recommendations. One of them, those recommendations was to build on the county development plan and then take it to the next level to a comprehensive nature. They also recommended doing the strategic planning as well as the CIP. We also, I'll skip that one. We also had the Government Restructuring Committee in 2012, and they were formed by the Board of Supervisors through an action by the board to look at our governmental operations. There's a formal report that they filed, but one of the things I want to note on this slide is they prioritize those CPAT recommended strategies. And that's what set the stage then for our CIP, our strategic plan. Then again, the RFP to do the C2C plan. As part of the basis, we did a comprehensive plan audit. This is even before we started developing the request for proposals to bring a consultant for our comprehensive plan. We just wanted to see what we had. We weren't sure where we were. We knew where we wanted to go, but when I say we, planning and zoning staff knew where we wanted to go, but there are so many departments and offices throughout Story County, and that's what this audit did. It looked at all of Story County. And then that got us into doing visioning. We worked with the Institute for Decision Maker. This should look very familiar since this is the vision that is now in our C2C plan and our values that are part of that. And then we took all that and we started planning for the the cornerstone to capstone plan. So you've seen the cornerstone, and then the capstone was the culmination with the adoption of the plan in 2016. Throughout, though, since 1957, the key theme has been the cooperation amongst all of our communities. Whether that's been providing technical assistance when requested, like for floodplain management, to our formal agreement with the city of Nevada, and then followed up with the formal agreement with the city of Ames, to actually working within our communities in 1993 and 2003, when we did the C2C, the CDP, the County Development Plan, when we formally adopted within those planning areas the land use plans of all the communities, so that we paid homage to the planning efforts that they had already done and build on that for cooperation and communication. So I think that is, yeah, then we're here implementing the C2C plan. That's your history lesson for the day. There's a lot that went into this over the years. I do want to note that in 2003, when the cooperative planning areas were adopted, one of the principles that came out of that was language that's really similar to what we have right now in our county development or our C2C plan. Until fringe area studies are adopted, city land use plans, policy, goals, and objectives are implemented where available within the cooperative planning areas by the county and staff and decision makers in consultation with applicable city. So that theme of cooperation with the communities and look at their land use plans has been a vein for the past 20 plus years. If you have any questions, I tried to give as high level as I could.
I appreciate the background.
I'll get you theses too, if you all would like those. Actually, Les's thesis is really very interesting to discuss our development patterns and our unincorporated Story counties and some of the mistakes we made that we corrected in 2003. With that, I will stop and switch gears to your presentation.
Thanks so much, Leanne.
Thank you.
So I think to build off what Leanne just shared with you all, this morning, what we're talking about is within 2 miles of Ames, we've typically had this fringe area agreement. And as you all know, we're no longer actively working on updating that fringe area agreement. And so we need current mapping for that area to help us guide decisions and land use. We're just asking for direction this morning. What will happen is you'll give us direction on, what you'd like to further consider. And then we'll take that to the Planning and Zoning Commission, and then back to you all through public hearing processes once we've prepared it. So again, as Leanne stated, the C2C plan in the 2 mile area around cities maps urban expansion areas. And these urban expansion areas, we've worked with these cities to understand their comprehensive plans, their plans for growth, and then we map them as part of our own plan to ensure we're coordinating with them and not creating incompatibilities in land use. So I just wanted to show you on the next few slides. So this is overall in the county. You can see the blue, barely see the blue, but there's 6 communities that have these urban expansion areas. So zooming in, here's Story Cities. It's pretty large. They show growth in all directions. Nevada's, which we already saw today. Huxley's. Huxley's is interesting because they're going through a comprehensive planning process. Or planning to sometime in the next few years. And so I think, and Leanne could jump in here if I'm wrong, but we really sat down with them and worked through what their growth plans could be. And so occasionally Huxley will, have growth in that in their little, you see the white square in the middle of their city limits. There's been some residential development in that area. And so I think this is an evolving document, an evolving plan, but we try to coordinate with the city to understand what they're doing there and make sure our goals aren't conflicting. And then Gilbert's, again, a large area, but this is the area their comprehensive plan mapped. I think their comp plan was done in 2018, so right after ours. Okay, so I'm going to turn it over to Marcus now to talk more about, in practice, what does this mapping mean?
Morning, board.
Morning.
So this mapping is part of how staff provides comments to cities for like when they're proposing annexation. So earlier today, Amelia brought the Nevada request before you all, and we used this to guide what comments we have back to the cities. It also guides our compatibility with CUPs and rezonings. So when it comes to CUPs, we want to make sure that we're not citing something that would be incompatible with future growth of cities, or with which would conflict with the rezoning as well. So, so then a portion of this is that when we take CUPs to the Board of Adjustment, if they conclude that all development criteria will be met by the development, it shall approve the application and plans unless it concludes that one of these points is that it would not be in accord with the intent, purpose, and spirit of the C2C plan. So C2C plan is something that we use regularly, and it affects or has its implications into approving things like CUPs.
I will say it's discretionary though, right? So this language is up here for a reason. Unless it's proposed, there's a strong probability it will conflict with the C2C plan. And so what we do as staff is provide principles. So if you're in the urban expansion area, we'd put the principles for that designation in the staff report, and then the board can, consider those. And is this a compatible use? Is it not? It's at their discretion. So there's no teeth. It's just a guide for decision making. Sorry.
And just for anyone listening, CUP, conditional use permit.
Yes, correct. So another part of that stands for approval when it comes to rezonings, is that these petitions to rezone shall satisfy that it conforms to the C2C plan. And so currently, we would need C2C plan amendments are needed for most rezonings in the county. Most of it is A1. So when someone does want to rezone, we have to come back, amend the C2C plan, and then go through the rezoning process. And then the request in these areas would be how we would take those to you all, whether we're advising how we have to amend from ag conservation or how we have to amend from urban expansion areas. So either way, those things have to that still ultimately results in a C2C plan amendment.
It's just a different set of considerations. So instead of thinking about how valuable the ag land is we're taking out of production, which would still be a factor, we're also thinking about
How this affects the potential growth, how it can affect or direct growth around those city limits. So another, future land use map is critical in our planning and intergovernmental cooperation. As it identifies these areas that the cities could grow in. When we look at these things, we want to make sure we're not creating conflicts, right? We don't want to site wind farms in an area that's gonna need infrastructure from a city in the future for their own growth. Also, we have a couple of slides here on what happens when development kind of prematurely happens that doesn't align with plans because they're either not there or something else can happen, and we have rural development that then moves cities' plans because there wasn't that cooperation that had happened. And then there's some areas that we have mismatched uses. So we have really large residential lots next to 6,000 square foot city lots. So there's a bunch of mismatch there that then limits any increased density within the city limits to, not take as much ag land out of production, right? It also, its future land use mapping helps focus investment for infrastructure, makes it less costly. And cities have subdivision review within the 2 miles per state law, but they can still have issues when those individual parcels are developed that don't match near their boundaries.
So I'm going to go through a few examples, and I know we've talked about a little bit about, when we map our expansion areas, it helps us make sure that those uses in those areas are compatible with city development, but what are the county's goals in that, right? So C2C plan goals, I think the board's goals include for preserving rural character and agricultural land, and coordinating with cities helps us do that. So here's an example from Huxley where we did not coordinate on growth. It was a rural subdivision that was proposed on an oak savanna, and the county recommended denial. And it was annexed by the city and developed. Anyway, so this is just an example. I know it's not an urban expansion area, but why coordination is important for the county's goals and working with our city and having that relationship. This is a good example of this area it was this white square in Huxley's urban expansion area between their boundaries. They're trying to do residential development on the ag land to the south of Oak Bend Road. And every year, it seems every 2 years, they annex a little bit more land to do some more residential housing that's at a pretty high density. We have received a lot of requests for rural development in this area too. You all just saw a residential parcel subdivision on this road to take one of the lots on the north side and divide it in two. And that type of rural development, as you can see, we've got these large parcels on the north side of the road, and we're going to have denser city development on the south side. Having the rural development on the north side, while it is a nice area, it makes providing water and sewer difficult in the area because, how are you going to serve the folks on the north side of the road? Are we just focusing on the south side? Could it have been a denser development that would have required less ag land to be taken out of production if it had been within the city? And I think we really start to see this in some of the areas outside of Ames. So we've got areas where we've allowed a rural development. And then we still have ag land adjacent to the city or within the city that hasn't developed yet. And so we're causing development to move further out quicker than it would if it was incremental and occurred, as the city was providing infrastructure. And the last example is, this area at 190th and around Aerosmith Trail. I think through the fringe plan process and through Ames's 2040 plan process, we found that the city is not interested in annexing that residential area. And it's because it's hard to serve. But what that means then is that cities have growth goals, and to fit, their 15,000 people that they project growing to over the next 20 years, they have to grow further out into other areas and map areas such as the area between Ames and Gilbert for development instead of something that would be more contiguous to city limits. And I think ensuring that city development is contiguous by limiting some of these residential uses is to the county's benefit. And limiting some uses that might be commercial that are in future growth areas, because then we don't have the city growing further out into other areas or around these areas, or have these areas develop before they really otherwise would had city infrastructure been required.
Okay, so the next few slides are about alternatives. Remember, we're not proving anything. This is not adopting anything. We're just looking for this guidance as to how we'll continue to map, and then that will go to Planning and Zoning Commission based on their recommendations and bring it to you. We'll also have public input, all those things. Again, just want to be clear, not adopting anything today. So we came up with 3 alternatives. The first one being to adopt the 2040 Ames comprehensive plan that was updated on May 9th as the basis for the future land use mapping for the 2-mile area outside of Ames corporate limits. Again, this is just replacing this area that we currently do not have mapping for, since the French plan is no longer in effect. So this alternate most closely aligns with the C2C plan's approach for integrating municipal comprehensive plans. So this goes back to that first map where it shows all the cities and all of the urban expansion areas being displayed as they have gone through their planning and mapped. So this map, you good? Depicts that. So this shows that area as aligned with the Ames 2040 plan.
And I will just note,
And
We-
Gilbert's.
yeah, Marcus noted the date of May 9th. I know during the fringe plan process, there were some questions or some areas that Ames offered if we had a fringe plan to remove from its urban reserve. They did not, without a fringe plan, remove those areas. And that's what they discussed on May 9th. So that's what this map is informed by.
So they did remove a couple areas though, right? Meadow Glen is rural residential.
Yes, they put Meadow Glen as a rural residential with the urban reserve overlay. We do not have a C2C plan designation urban reserve overlay, so I did not map it that way on our plan, because again, this has no control over annexation.
Right.
Just acknowledging that it's rural residential is how we've mapped it in alternative 1.
And was there another place, is there something else that they decided not to include? Or was it just Meadow Glen? I thought
It was just, it was just Meadow Glen, and then they took the existing rural residential mapping from the fringe plan that we'd worked with, county staff had worked on. And then I believe they added the Conley's trucking site by Ada Hayden to urban expansion because there's interest in annexing that property, and they've been, I think, working with the property owner on it.
So those are shown on Appendix C.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
So there is an alternative map too, but got the other 2 alternatives here is, so the alternative 2 is adopting the Ames 2040 mapping but with the changes requested by you all on the September 20th meeting for the area between Ames and Gilbert and southwest of Ames. Even with it, so with this alternative, we would still, as part of this, would identify the areas that conflict with this city's 2040 plan. And those would have to be noted in the amendment. C2C plan directs that any conflicts need to be identified when we adopt new mapping. And then adopt the Ames 2040 plan mapping with other changes For example, areas where rural residential or commercial industrial growth would be directed from you all. As areas that you all would see that would fit. And there is one other map. So this is the mapping for two. That's that 2040 with the changes that you all had requested last year at that September 20th meeting. Shows the area between 180th and 190th being removed. And then a good chunk of that southwest of Ames also being removed.
And I think from a staff perspective, you know, this is an option you can direct us to take. I don't know if it would really have a different effect than the first alternative. We're not, again, we can't control annexations. Ames still has their 2040 plan mapped like alternative one. And we would need to do a summary of in the C2C plan, hey, there still might be city growth here. We should still be watching out for compatibility issues. It would probably, we'd still have that component in our reviews then where we'd say growth may occur. So we might want to think about X, Y, and Z in addition to A, B, C when we're looking at conditional uses or rezonings. My only concern with this option is the summaries of the comp plans are hidden in Appendix F
Yes.
of the C2C plan. And so just from a usability perspective, having a map that's at a more front and center location, it's just an easier tool to use when we're doing reviews. You know, we get a phone call, I look at the map on my wall. But in terms of what effect it would have, we're still going to have to acknowledge that there's some inconsistencies with this option. So I think that's it.
This is just a technical thing, but on Appendix C, the alternative one, the area north of 180th is really Gilbert's urban expansion area, not Ames's, correct?
Yeah.
Correct.
It
Yep.
might be helpful if you had it a different color, because I first looked at it and went, what?
Yeah. I know.
I don't know if you have another color available. You can probably figure something out.
But we'll make a line there because all the urban expansion areas are blue in the
Because they're
C2C
all-
plan.
They're all the same area. We don't have separate, we don't break them out.
Right.
But that can
We'll label it.
for the.
Yeah.
So it's easy for you all to see what that is when
Yeah.
whatever comes
People
before you.
will
for
look at this
area.
map and assume that's all Ames.
Yeah, yeah.
Expansion area, and it's not.
We will label it.
I would do that.
You kind of answered my question in the comments of it regards the mapping, would that really change any difference of what Ames can or cannot do?
No, this does not change anything that Ames. Well, it doesn't change any of their annexation thoughts, any routes that they're heading down. This doesn't change that. And we, as the county, do not have authority to deny any annexation. We can give them comments based, and we would give comments based on this, right? We can do that piece. But regarding any way, we don't have anything to deny. The only, city development board, those things have to review those annexation requests, but that's where that stops. We have no say in what they annex.
I think the big thing that it does is when the county is looking at conditional use permits, it means that whoever's looking at those and making decisions will be looking at the land in a little different way. That's to me the big thing. If somebody comes and says they want a conditional use permit to do this or that in any of those areas, that are the difference,
Yeah.
but yeah, I've gotten a lot of comments and emails about don't let Ames annex this land. Well, we talked about that in several of our urban fringe hearings, and we have nothing to do with what Ames, we can recommend, we can say, here's what the county thinks, but it
Mm.
doesn't matter. Anybody who looks at the code will realize that we cannot say, don't let Ames annex my land.
Right.
Right. But so if we were to go with alternative two, for example, it wouldn't change Ames's ability to annex anything, but when we respond with support or no or comments, we could point to,
We didn't map it this way. And here's
yeah,
why.
we didn't map it this way.
Yeah, and I guess a third option that I just thought of now would be, you could map it as alternative one, but the summary section of the C2C plan could say, we got a lot of comments that folks in these areas don't want to be annexed, and, for review of annexations, we should be aware of those public comments. So it'd just be a land use compatibility perspective wall summarizing all those comments we got about annexation.
My only concern about that is that they would get, that would get
I know.
buried and nobody would see it.
Yeah.
And we're having to talk about this now because there's no mapping
Correct.
where the fringe was. And so if someone wanted
If someone wants,
rezoning or something, we can't rezone what isn't mapped now.
Yep.
So we have to talk about, like, we have to get this figured out.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. So
Okay.
we've been directing folks, we have a few requests, in fact, and they all have to do individual C2C plan amendments before they can make a subdivision or rezoning request.
Because there's no plan?
Yeah.
Or
So-
no map?
Right.
Mhm.
So for instance, we've got a rural subdivision request off of Dayton and 190th, kind of by Martin Marietta, and it's zoned appropriately for the use even, but we don't have future land use mapping, and how can we conclude that that the development is thus in accordance with the future land use plan? So that's the first step for them until we get this done, and for others.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I think there's some different philosophies in the communities in terms of their comprehensive plans. That's the one thing that this also showed me. And I wonder with Huxley, you did a percentage of their current land, and I see Huxley and Nevada, despite the fact that they're growing pretty substantially, are lower in percentages. I kind of assume that's because they've recently had some annexations,
Yes,
a bunch of territory.
and I think it's because the annexations I've seen at least have actually been outside of those urban expansion areas.
Hmm. Interesting, okay. And I also think about Ames and that there's a lot of development that is going on right now in area that's annexed. Have they, and I always forget, have they annexed the southwest of Cameron and Carver?
Yes,
That is annexed now.
yes.
So there's going to be a lot of housing developments going in there. I don't know where they are on Hyde South 190th, that area west of Hyde. Have you heard lately? Is that development going, or is that kind of
I think-
stalled?
Didn't they just, I don't know.
I think that is stalled for right at the moment when I
Yeah.
was.
But
talking-
they've done a lot of work on that. There's work going on Cameron Estates to the east of Hyde. There's a lot of new housing going in there. I still do have concerns that some things will be leapfrogged and go up north of 190th. And we will still, unless the focus is really on getting those lands developed. I have some concern about that, but that was a lot of what I think we were talking about with the fringe plan. And unfortunately, we didn't get some of the things there that we thought made some sense. So I'm very mixed on this.
I think we worked really hard to get to where we were.
Mhm.
And so I would, if it has no impact on annexations, and it's just gonna help inform our decisions when we are able to make decisions. I would feel much more comfortable going with adopting the 2040 plan with the changes that we requested. Now I'm not sure how much of a headache that is for anyone trying to implement that, but that's what I would feel most comfortable with.
Let me ask.
I think it's something with consistency and perception that comes in. And we did spend months
Uh-huh.
on an issue that we came to kind of an agreement on. And so it's, do you stay consistent is one thing that wrestles in, in my
Mhm.
head. And then it's that public perception too, of, well, why are you changing when we're looking at this way before, but also acknowledging it's not going to change annexations at all.
Mhm.
So, I mean, that's the other thing. I think either way you choose alternative one, for example, folks are going to think you're going to be annexed. If you choose alternative two, folks are going to think you're not going to be annexed, but you could still be annexed. So either way, you're still going to get the folks to come talk to you on that, because as I think, as you've said, Linda, and Amelia and Marcus, you've both said, we don't have control over annexation.
And this fits, and it may not seem like it does right now, but I just need to say this. I'm not against development out in the unincorporated areas. I think our biggest problem, and where we have way in the past, I think, have created problems, is not having minimum levels of service for rural residential subdivisions. I mean, that's what we're talking about right now. We've got subdivisions that the city is never going to annex because they have been really not built to any standards. And we're trying to muck around with that right now. We're trying to say, let's not let that happen again. I think there's a place for rural residential subdivisions, but I think we need to get our act together on it.
Once we get through this work program item, that will be the next one.
Good. Because I've seen some things happen even today that I'm saying that shouldn't be happening that way.
Yeah, my concern is if we were to go with option one, then all of that work
Mhm.
disappears. All of the considerations that we identified, all of those priorities that we identified, they just would not exist. So the next planning and zoning commission that comes on would have no idea
Mhm.
that even happened. And if going with option two will have no impact on their ability to annex or not, at least we would have a record of what was important at this time.
If we went with that option, would it be okay if the summary included for review of rezonings and conditional uses, some
Yeah,
of the
'cause
same
that-
principles as the urban expansion?
Help me
area?
understand what you're asking.
So the urban expansion area has principles about coordinating septics, so they can be hooked into city sewer in the future, or thinking about future city land uses in that area. So just for the review of like a conditional use or rezoning,
Mm-hmm.
it might be helpful if we still had in this, just the summary section of staff may still want to look at.
Yeah, I
Some of
think
those.
I would think that would be important,
Okay,
that it,
that'd be fine.
I don't want us to close any doors necessarily. I want to make sure that
I think
Yeah.
with what Amelia is saying is with us still having some sort of a standard in there that we're going to look at option one still, we're not going to create situations where we're forcing the city to leapfrog. So
right.
someone comes with some CUP request north of 190th or rezoning, and we're like, well, it meets the C2C plan because we didn't map that area as urban expansion. And now, well, the city has to leapfrog and annex north of that. They're not gonna bring that in, but then go further out because, well, we mapped it as not that area that could potentially be in the city limits. So I think that's where where
So
we're at with that.
how would that happen if you can't have an island then? So,
Well, I mean, if you look at Huxley, you know, that same thing where they just, it's a 50-foot wide strip that extends a quarter mile north to then that development.
There's one of those on West James, in West
yeah,
James.
but, okay, okay.
There's a lot.
Remember,
Mhm.
yeah, you have the
That-
strip and then it's
Okay,
contiguous.
okay, that's
It's really-
that's
So
what
that's
we
a-
talked about before with the
Without that,
urban. Mhm.
without that piece in there,
Mhm.
that's where we can easily get to as well.
So
Mhm.
maybe just, so like principle 3 in the urban expansion area is when annexation is not appropriate at the time of a development proposal, coordinate a cooperative review between the city and the county to make sure development occurs at urban density or scale, using city development standards where applicable, are using conditional agreements to ensure development is built, so there's a seamless transition into the city when the area is annexed. So we could do something about, we don't think it's appropriate for these areas between 180th and 190th to be annexed in the southwest. That's alternative 2. However, we acknowledge that the city has still mapped these areas that way. And so if a rezoning or conditional use permit were to come in, we should still have some level of coordinated review.
Let's go back to that principle 3, because I had a huge question mark beside that.
Okay.
What the heck does this mean? When annexation is not appropriate at that time of a development proposal. When who says annexation is not appropriate?
When the
It would be the city.
city, because we're not,
I think this is written in.
This is written poorly. I
With
don't-
the idea that property owners request annexations, right? And so you can request annexation to a city, and a city may say, you know, we can't actually serve you with infrastructure at this time. However, in the future, long-term, we still may be able to, so we need to think about how the scale of the development and other factors to make sure there's a transition.
So if this read, when the city decides that annexation is not appropriate at the time of a development proposal, correct? Somebody coordinates a cooperative review or approval.
Yeah. Yeah,
Rewrite this. This is almost indecipherable.
okay.
Who would coordinate a cooperative review or approval?
we do.
We would.
Planning and Development would coordinate a cooperative review or approval between Story County and the city according to the following standards.
And these are our principles.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is why it's not stated.
Yeah, but it's still a really hard thing to read.
So again, I think if we're not mapping those areas, because I get it, there was a lot of public
Okay.
comment. I mean, that's why we created alternative 2 for you. We recognize that it's not necessarily in line with what the C2C plan has done in the past, but we heard those comments too. So we wanted to give you a second alternative. And so if we want to do alternative 2, just something in that summary about there's a conflict here, here's why. So many comments were received about annexation during this fringe plan process, but we still need to coordinate on some level for other requests. I think that would be fine,
Okay.
and we'll rewrite that.
Yeah.
I would feel better with that.
Okay,
Yeah, I would be fine with that too.
great.
We do have someone who would like to make public comment. Are we at a place where we're good to take public comment?
Sure.
Okay. Bill Severly, would you like to step to the podium? And just make sure the microphone is, the green light is on.
Oh, okay. Thank you. I'm not going to repeat but I'm not going to repeat a bunch of stuff that was already discussed. I'm going to kind of repeat exactly what was said by the board and the planners, that as we all are very aware, much effort, many discussions, meetings, time spent, and even some tears have been shed by all the parties involved in in our discussions of the urban fringe plan. And the parties involved, the Story County planning staff, City of Ames planning staff, Story County Board of Supervisors, the City of Gilbert, and the county residents, all in regard to the 24 to the Ames Urban Fringe Plan, which then was dissolved on the 30th of April, 2023. And Story County Planning has offered 3 alternatives here. And as was discussed during the Urban Fringe Plan time, the City of Ames is basically, or the maps for area or option alternative 1 encompasses 19,747 acres. The amount of land that alternative 2 takes out is about 2,500 acres. It's in that little chart that was provided by the planning staff. At this point, I would encourage the board to recommend alternative 2, mostly as a resident of the southwest area of Ames, that area would, off the map, as been stated, would at least provide a feeling of comfort to those residents that live out there, especially since during all the discussions, there's only been, if you continue to talk about the Chaplin property or whatever we're focusing on right now, or calling it right now, it is still only about 75 acres or 75 acres development. I'm repeating a lot of stuff that we heard before, and I'm sorry about that. As far as the 190th to 180th up in Gilbert, there's probably going to be some kind of compromise at some point, as it's been stated. But anyway, I would have really appreciated if alternative 2 would be selected, and whatever recommendations or considerations that the county planning staff recommend, it'll be reviewed several times according to the documentation. So, but at least that would be a starting point. And I do also strongly agree with the fact that anything that is in a narrative with any of these alternatives will more than likely get lost, because the first thing people are going to do, which they have done, is just look at the map and go, ooh, this is me. Well, then that's what I'm doing. I'm looking at the map and I'm going, okay, 1 has me in it, 2 does not. Anyway, that's my run on. Thank you.
Thank you, Phil.
Thank you.
Okay, so you were just needing direction. Do you feel like you have that direction?
Yeah, here's what I've got. Mapping with alternative 2, but a summary that discusses there are these other areas that the city has shown future growth in due to the fringe plan process and comments received. You know, I'll go into maybe some info on the urban reserve between 180th and 190th, and some of Linda's comments about infill, some of the Champlin Farms history. And then talk about there's still maybe development requests in these areas, rezonings, CUPs that will need some level of coordinated review. So I can prepare that and we'll take it to the commission and then back to you all.
I think it would be nice, I don't know if that's the word. I think it would be useful if one could have just a short paragraph in here that says the county is not responsible for annexation.
Great.
Yes.
We can make recommendations, but it's up to the city. And here's the code chapter if anybody wants to look at it.
I actually wrote down, add a page on annexation.
major.
Yeah, thank
so,
you.
yeah.
It's
The-
so
The other
confusing.
thing I just want people to understand who live out in the unincorporated area, and this comes from all the far-flung discussions we have had, is the county still has standards for development. We still have a county zoning ordinance. We still have standards for development. And we have on planning and development's work plan to develop minimum, what's it called? Levels of service. I want people to understand that, developing out in the unincorporated areas is not a free-for-all. And we realize our responsibility to have responsible, orderly development there, because eventually, not that we want to see the whole county annexed into Ames, but eventually areas get annexed, or a city will look at it and say, ain't annexing that. And we want to minimize that in the future. So those are my two editorial comments.
Supervisor Hens?
Nothing else after
Okay.
that.
All right, perfect. Hey, thank you very
Thanks.
much. Any upcoming agenda items?
Nope.
Now it's time for public comment number 2, comments from the public on items not on this agenda. The board may not take any action on comments due to requirements of open meetings law, but may do so in the future. Anyone wishing to make public comment, you can step forward to the table or raise your hand on Zoom. And we have okay, we also have someone on Zoom, so it's okay. We can, if you could just state your name for us, please.
Yes, my name is David Hoagland. I'm the new city administrator in Huxley. I've been there about 7 weeks, so I met Linda the other day at the Ames Economic Development Commission meeting up in Huxley.
You're gonna have to talk into that. I'm so sorry.
I don't talk very loud to begin with. I apologize. Again, my name is David Hoagland. I'm the new city administrator in Huxley. I've been there about 7 weeks. Have come back to Story County. I worked for the city of Nevada back in 96 to 07, so I'm real familiar with this area. Still know a lot of the staff here that works for the county, so I'm kind of glad to be back. I did take note of the couple examples of Huxley. I will just note that those happened before my time. And I do know that they had a comp plan that was done in 19, but the council did not approve that. So that's kind of on my list to add to one of my tasks to continue to work forward. I just wanted to come up and introduce myself, and I won't be a stranger. So thank you.
Well, thank you so much. Appreciate you coming and sitting through the meeting. And we have Rosie. Is it Rosie?
Hello, yep, it's Rosie Brandt. We are out on the West Coast, so we can't be at the meeting, and I turned in late, so I didn't get to do public comment before your discussion about the land use plan. Just wanted to say I've appreciated everything you've talked about, and I do feel like alternative 2 is a good one, at least to start with. Ames to me is a bully. They, you talk about cooperation. Are they cooperating? And this sprawl into the rural community here, it's got to stop. And I don't know what the county has. They don't have rights for annexation. Do they have zoning? Do they have subdivision? And Linda, I know you talked about it, that they do have some control. So there's got to be a way to stop this urban sprawl. Thanks a lot, ladies, for all your time. Bye.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Rosie.
Anyone else wishing to make public comment? Okay, seeing no one else step forward, we will close public comment number 2 and move to liaison assignment committee meeting updates and announcements from the supervisors. I'm looking this way, so I'll start with you, Supervisor Hedden.
Sure. So this afternoon, I have the Women of NACO meeting, and then I also have a meeting with the Central Iowa Workforce Executive Director. Tomorrow down at the Opioid Summit all day in Des Moines. I do have a Fostering Resiliency in Elementary Schools committee meeting tomorrow. I'm on a committee in Nevada that starts tomorrow that I'll try to zoom in for. Thursday, I will be at Special Olympics in the morning. Then I have a CICS meeting in the afternoon. trying to see if I thought I had something else on, oh, and then my son graduates from his internship program that he was at. Friday, I have an IRDC that I put on to temporary or possibly zoom into on water, nature, and rural vitality. Monday is Memorial Day, and that's what I have going on.
Okay. Supervisor Merkin?
When's the opioid summit?
Tomorrow and
Wednesday
Thursday.
and Thursday,
That's
but I'm
what I
not going to be able to make.
You're not going to
Thursday.
make it. That's why I was looking at my calendar and said, okay.
Yeah, because CICS is going on and they're discussing some topics that I
Gotcha.
can't miss that day.
Okay, and I will be on in the opioids. Like tonight I have Ames area MPO, and if anybody saw an email from me saying the 190th Street corridor study was going to be on the agenda, it's not. I just got an email about that. It's going to be in July instead, I believe. So that's going to wait. Opioid Summit, the next 2 days. Do we have secondary roads tour on Friday?
No,
That's next,
Yeah. that's in
it's June?
Yeah.
Oog, okay. So I don't know what I'm doing on Friday then, and Monday's a holiday. Maybe I'm getting my garden planted. 12th of June? I was hoping
Okay.
that was on May. Okay, that's what I got.
I have Women of NACO this afternoon. I have a boost meeting tonight, and then I will be at the opioid summit tomorrow. And Thursday morning, I will be at the opioid summit. I have a conceptual review that I will zoom into and a technical service bureau meeting all at the same time. So I'll be wearing 2 different headphones. And then Juneteenth planning meeting Thursday afternoon, the CFR meeting Thursday night. Friday, I've got Central Iowa Juvenile Detention meeting that I'll be zooming into. And then I will be off Friday afternoon, and then Monday is a holiday. Yeah. So there we go.
I move we adjourn.
Second,
Moved and seconded. Hens.
Aye.
Merkin.
aye.
Basil. Aye. We are adjourned. Thank you.